This is PORPIS, my planetary orbital and rotational position interaction schedule. It's a seismic, volcanic, and atmospheric prediction system, among other things such as the solar cycles too. So this is how it works. Throughout all my videos, I'll be using this children's model of the solar system to demonstrate the basic functionality and the properties of PORPIS. Even with the obvious inaccuracies at which this model shows, such as the size and scale of the sun and the planets, the distances between the sun and the planets and each other, the orbital speeds of the planets are not right, the rotation of each planet, there is no rotation here of the planets, and the axial tilt of the planets is tidally locked to the sun. But even with all that, this still works fine for me to show you the functioning properties of PORPIS. Okay, the one thing that all the planets have, or all the celestial bodies in the solar system have, is the sun. That's what they have in common. The one thing they have in common is they all orbit the sun. And what PORPIS proposes is that all these celestial bodies, all these planets, including the sun, they make up a constantly changing, integrated electronic and magnetic circuit. And that's because each of the planets and the sun is a self-generating electrical dynamo. Because the core of each of these bodies, the planets and the sun, has an iron nickel magnet. It's magnetized. And it's a substantial size, percentage-wise, for each planet and the sun. It's a substantial magnet. That's what causes each one to be basically its own generating dynamo. That's why they rotate as they do at a steady pace constantly, and that's why they stay in a fixed position as far as their rotation. They're not just tumbling willy-nilly. And that each planet, not the sun, just the planets, they each comprise, with their rotational and orbital positions, depending on their rotational and orbital positions, they each will comprise three different types of components of the circuit. They can be a generating dynamo, which they all are, but they continue to do that within part of the circuit, or they can be a transistor or conductor between two other dynamos, or three, they can be a ground. So it's an electromagnetic and electric circuit, and we'll explain more how it works, and we'll do that. So within the circuits, all the planets are continually and always connected to the sun. They're always connected to the sun electronically and magnetically. But they're also connected to each other. Between their connections to the sun, they are connected to each other. That's where their orbital and rotational positions come into playing when and where and how the magnitude of the events, the storms, atmospheric storms, or the seismic earthquake events, seismic events. And there are four types of circuit situations that cause earthquakes or cause seismic events or cause atmospheric events to start or to get instigated. And let me just go through what they are real quick. One is a capacitance value exchange. That means as they're orbiting, but their orbits are at such a rate that as they sit there and rotate, they capacitance change between themselves as they move, in slow rotation. They're not moving position a whole lot with each other over a few hours or a few days, but their rotations as opposing each other, certain sides of the planet, certain sides may have more capacitance availability than another side or more dynamo charge. Magnetically higher also could be a magnetic anomalies. That will connect them in a variance of connection of electrical and magnetic between them. That will vary just due to the rotations, depending on their components, the elements around the magnetized cores, depending on what's there, and if they have a more connecting place on the rotation, it will connect and break connection and connect and break connection. That's the first one, just a basic rotational capacitance value exchange. The second one is as they orbit, there'll be what I call a circuit break. And I'll go into these in individual detail here in a minute. So the other one is circuit break. It's when two planets or more break circuit between each other, and I'll show you how that happens. They remain connected to the sun, but they may break circuits with each other. The third circuit connection is a circuit reconnect or circuit connect. That's when they break the opposite of the break. When a break happens, then there will also be reconnects happening. And I'll go into, like I said, I'll go into each one of these individually and show you how they work as far as PORPIS is concerned. The fourth circuit situation is the short circuit. That is the most extreme, and that is when we see the biggest earthquakes on the earth. 99% of the time, it's a short circuit, and I'll explain how all four of these work one at a time next. Okay, on the capacitance value exchange, just like the fault lines on the earth, as the earth rotates, the fault lines are places where the electrical and magnetic conduction are higher between the Mars or between Venus or any planet that's in line, straight line with that fault line on the earth is more likely to have an exchange with that planet because of the fault lines on the earth. I'm not sure what there is on the other planets, but I do know they exchange with the earth. I believe they also have certain rotational positions where a certain side of the planet will exchange with any other planet that also has a possible anomaly on its side. And it could just be the planet there, and when that anomaly comes in line with the planet, it exchanges a little bit. Most of these for the Earth will be your 1, 2, 3, and 4 magnitude quakes, real small quakes, not too much at all. And that explains, this is how PORPIS explains what I call the capacitance value exchange, which is just basically a rotational exchange as the planets orbit, but since they stay in this position for a while before they make other changes, that's why that happens in a daily on the Earth. You'll see daily 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4 quakes, possibly even 5s on a daily, time scale. So we'll move on to the second one now. Okay, the second circuit situation is called circuit break. And it can happen between any two planets. And what it is as, if you notice here, as Venus goes around the sun, ahead of the Earth, their line of sight gets broken, if you know what I mean. The sun is becoming between them. The direct connection they have here is no longer there when Venus reaches that point. And it can happen right there when it just starts, or it can happen just after they get so far through, more than 50%. They lose line of sight of each other. This is a circuit break. The circuit has been broken between these two. So since they're all connected, when that circuit breaks, everybody else, all the other planets feel a jolt. That jerks them to where their capacitance is elevated because these two no longer have the circuit going around here, where it was going all the way around, including these two. When these two break circuit, there's a jolt and everything. So the Earth will feel like a 4 or 5 quake, possibly a 6, depending on which planet the circuit breaks. And it can be Jupiter. When the Earth and Jupiter are this way, and it more likely be the Earth coming away from Jupiter, but I'm just doing this because this is how it's set up. When Jupiter and the Earth get broken by the sun, a circuit break, you feel a much larger quake there because it's a much larger circuit component, much larger dynamo it's breaking connection with. And all the planets will feel a heavier jolt in their electrical circuit because of that break of a larger planet. Especially when Saturn and Jupiter make a circuit break, you get a lot of jerk in the rest of the planets. That's the two largest dynamos breaking connection in the circuit. And when it happens with any two planets. Anyone can be going behind to make it happen between any two, Mars and Earth, Earth and Saturn, any two. Any two can cause a circuit break. Well, we'll move on. Okay, the next one is called circuit reconnect. And it's just the opposite of the break. And I'll use Venus and the Earth here. Venus is back behind the sun. And as the planet comes out from behind the sun and it reconnects, if you see, the Earth and Venus have reconnected, you'll get a jolt. And there could be another planet over here at the same time. It's making a disconnect at the same time Venus makes a connect with the Earth. That will make the jolt or the seismic event on the Earth much larger. rather than just a reconnect, you also have a disconnect. And a lot of times these do happen simultaneously. It would look like it'd be within a day or two or a couple hours, but a lot of times once one connects or one disconnects and it's very close to both of them happening simultaneously, the other one will happen just a little early or just a little late, depending on the timing of how these work. But that is a reconnect. And like I said, the bigger the planet that reconnects, like Jupiter to Earth or Jupiter to Venus, the larger the event that we feel on the Earth, larger earthquake. And a lot of times, if there's a third one involved, like if Jupiter comes around right then when Venus and Earth are connected, or any two planets, there'll be a larger surge because there's a third one involved. You've got a conductor now in the middle. That can make the event on the Earth much more intense, and it can make it last longer and have very different particulars about how the event transpired. But anyway, that is circuit reconnect. Anytime two planets are split by the sun and they come into direct line of sight again. Reconnect. Now we'll move on to the important one. Okay, the fourth circuit situation is the short circuit. And why I call it a short circuit is because it involves more of the planets directly into the circuit situation, which causes them all to really intensify their connections within the circuit, but their electric and magnetic capacitance. It's a three-way thing, and it doesn't necessarily involve the sun at all. It's when a third planet, we'll use Saturn, the Earth, and we're going to use Neptune out here, because all the planets are involved, Neptune and Uranus also. But as one comes around, if you notice, when they get in a straight line like this, all three of these, anytime any three planets line up in a line of sight, and it doesn't matter if they're on the forward side of rotation or backward retro side of rotation around the sun, they will discharge between themselves, and it is usually fairly intense. Even when it's the inner planets, the smaller ones, it's fairly intense. That's when you get your 6s, 7s, 8s, and 9s quakes, is when you have larger planets, or even the smaller ones, 3 in a row. That is when you get your large quakes. And on this, it's like a connect, but it's 3 planets connecting. But there's usually not a disconnect problem. Once it connects and they balance out their capacitance, they can move out of line and it doesn't really affect them like it does when they make a break around the sun. It's because the toroidal rotation of the sun's magnetic field is what connects all these in the first place. It's what charges them up. They also have their own dynamo charging inside, but the sun helps them become charged up between each other. They are connected like the circuit. So that's the big one, is when there's 3 planets in a line, you'll get your largest quakes. And it can be on either side, especially if you have Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars in the middle. When this connect happens, when Saturn comes around and it gets in straight line, very close to straight line, it don't have to be perfect. It can be a little bit out, depending on the capacitance and the planet involved. It might be just a little bit out of perfect straight line, but it'll hit. And I know by earthquakes on Earth, it happens. And you can have these 3 over here line up in a short circuit. The Earth will still feel a 6 to 7 quake, at least a 6. Anytime 3 exchange, as it re-evaluates the circuit and you're losing 3 of them or changing the circuit at one instance, the Earth feels a big part of that. All of them do, but we know it here on Earth because I've seen this happen. So I implore you to try and prove me right or prove me wrong that when the major earthquakes show up on Earth, there's going to be a lineup of 3 planets, just like this. Somewhere around the sun, 3 planets are going to line up. And usually the bigger the planet, the bigger the quake the Earth feels, or the bigger the situation probably all planets feel. But it doesn't have to be the Earth even involved in it, because it's a circuit. It could be these 3, Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars. It can be any 3 planets that cause an earthquake on Earth. It can be Mercury, Venus, and Earth. Okay? It can be any 3 planets. And if you get a kicker big planet behind in a 4-way, you really get a big earthquake or volcanic activity on Earth, even storms. And you can also look for circuit connects. A small planet connects with another planet, or a circuit disconnect when a planet makes disconnection with the planet. Look it up, and I'll leave the links below. You can look on scope as where the planets are at any given time, or the Sky Live. It only goes back to 1900, but scope goes back as far as you want. Shows where the planets are in position. Compare that to where earthquakes and volcanic activity has happened on the Earth. You can go to Wikipedia, look those up, or you can go to the USGS site and look those up. Earthquakes, volcanic activity, and you can go to the atmospheric. USGS also has a connection to the atmospheric storms on Earth, which are harder to predict with the planets, but that's what causes them. But go back, you can go to them sites, compare in the past, and then you can look in the future, and you can predict for yourself when the next earthquake's going to be. And when you go to the past and see what the big ones were, the smaller ones, and what planets were in what position, you can look into the future and tell what planet, what kind of event the Earth is going to experience at a particular time in the future. So I'll leave those links below where you can go look for yourself, look up old events, compare them with where the planets were, and then go into the future and predict your own events. Make your own predictions for earthquakes and volcanic activity. I'm sure this is how it works. Prove me right, prove me wrong. Thank you.